SpongeBob Snuggie now? Hold it. Right. So, a conversation I had with a teacher of mine was something like this. It started out with her telling me, "So, what are you, a free spirit?" I said, "Well, sure. I mean, you can go ahead and call me that. Why not?" She said, No. Like, what are you? What do you call yourself? You know, like a wanderer, free soul. What is it?" I replied, "You're sounding like I have to call myself something." You know, she had good intentions. She didn't want to label me as something I'm not. Anyways, we're human beings. At least most of us are. I mean, I don't know about you, but as human beings, we can go to great lengths. However, we also have our limitations. One of these limitations is a psychological principle called 7 plus or minus 2. What that simply means is that we can only learn or process 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of information at once. With that being true, how are we to learn and process everything we need to learn, from school material to work information to people, every second of our existence? Well, our brains have a few ways of doing that, one of which is called prototyping. A prototype is a mental image we have of something in a certain category by which we compare every other thing in that category. So, for example, if I ask you to imagine a nurse, you'll probably get a mental image in your head of a nurse with certain characteristics that can include the nurse's age, gender, hair color, and uniform. Prototypes are useful. If they weren't, our brains probably wouldn't have evolved to create them in the first place. However, along with schemas, which are behavioral expectations that we set on things and people, the two are the root causes for stereotypes and labels that we throw out every day. Together, they result in our habit of assuming things about people and judging them based off of very little information. The fault in that, though, is the assumption that our human spirit is familiar, or that we can make it so. So how familiar is it, that whole idea of the human spirit? I'd say not very. I mean, something so vague, so similar and different in each of us, no one really understands it. And with so many of us, on a school campus, for example, or in a workspace, the mind would completely exhaust itself, attempting to grasp each and every individual around it. And that's why it resorts to strategies such as prototyping, which is exactly what was happening with my teacher. We see hundreds, maybe even thousands of individuals around us every day, and we don't know most of them. And that's why we go to generic terms like, say, the jocks, the hippies, the nerds, and of course the popular mean girls, and we group people under these known groups in order to be able to have the mental satisfaction of thinking that we understand the people around us. Now let's move on to another one of the processing strategies that our brains use: hierarchies. A hierarchy is a grouping of people or things and levels that are generally based off of importance or worth. We as human beings need to make decisions. We can't attend and pay equal attention to everything and everyone around us. And that's why after we've grouped people under specific known groups, we begin to place them somewhere along a hierarchy in order to know which emotions to allocate to which groups, such as groups we should be jealous of, groups we should make fun of, and say groups we should go to for help with homework. Let's take a look at a stereotypical example we see in numerous popular high school movies, where there are the attractive, popular girls with their male counterparts, and there are the nerds or the dorks that get thrown into lockers by them. In that very common example, we see a clear hierarchy that is to be ingrained in the mind of the viewer. The kid watching the movie is probably going to think, oh, maybe I should be like those cool kids and act like them in order to avoid getting thrown into a locker. And with that, the hierarchy begins to poison the kid's once innocent brain. So the completion of that whole process, we have people placed under specific known groups, and from there placed somewhere along a hierarchy. Do you see where I'm going with that? That's the root of racism and gender roles and so many of the social problems that we face. However, I'm not saying we don't need labels. We definitely do, because the complete elimination of labels can't come without the complete elimination of prototypes and hierarchies, which we need for everyday essential processes. For example, if it wasn't for prototypes, we wouldn't be able to make decisions such as, should I say take this class or that one, or should I buy Skittles or Cheetos, even though Skittles. So yes, labels are necessary for the sake of efficiency, really, more than anything. However, we need to note the limitations that labels set on us. Labels allow us to make assumptions and generalizations. They allow us to assume that we know somebody and what they're all about when we really know nothing. Well, you know nothing other than what he or she said or what we can come up with based off of what they're wearing. So, seeing as there are both uses and detrimental effects to labels, what should we do about them? Or what can we do about them, really? Well, I say for starters, we can become aware. We can teach ourselves to become more aware of our thoughts so that we can catch ourselves. We can catch ourselves judging a person walking by because we decided that they dressed weird, and we can catch ourselves when we give an unfriendly look to a person that we say heard maybe cheated in a relationship. And we can teach ourselves to always have an open line of communication with somebody before we place them under a certain category, and we can teach ourselves that even if somebody did make a mistake that is not definitive of their entire existence, and that there's always more sides to a person, more sides to a story than anyone may think. And the best way to teach all of that is, as it is with most things, is to lead by example. We can make sure that next time we hear a friend of ours throw out a label at somebody, that we call them out on it. And even more importantly, we need to make sure that we don't label ourselves, because when we do so is when we begin the end of our own personal self-exploration. Say, for example, I hear people start calling me a hippie. I need to make sure that I don't start believing in that in my own head, because if I do so, I begin to subconsciously behave in ways that I believe are more fit for a hippie. And I know that because it's happened to me, even though I thankfully snapped out of it. So now think back to me at the beginning of this, the guy with the luscious curly hair, with a SpongeBob Snuggie strumming his ukulele on stage. What did you think of that guy? You may have thought maybe I'm pretty good. If so, then thank you. If not, you may have thought, say I was some hipster, or maybe again a hippie, or just judge me in any shape or form. If so, just remember to stay conscious of your thoughts. Thank you.